women in history I never heard of, and wouldn't be surprised if you haven't either. Today, let's talk about Catherine Crowe. Catherine Crowe was born in 1790 and passed in 1872. She was the original ghost hunter, but I'd never heard of her before going to a Paracon. Yeah, so now you know I'm obsessed with the paranormal. Moving on, Catherine grew up in England. In the tradition of the time, she was educated at home. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot known about her early life, until she married this army guy. That wasn't a happy situation for her. So she got out of Dodge and settled for a while in Scotland. She became well known in literary circles there and in London. She was friends or corresponded with the likes of Charlotte Bronte and Charles Dickens. Remember that. It's going to be important. Really important. Catherine made her living as a writer of fiction, and her stories were very popular. She contributed to periodicals, she wrote plays and novels. Those kind of pissed off some people. I'm sure you're going to figure out which people in a second here. See, her books centered on women. She even made an amateur detective who was a woman and solved the case. At least one source said that book may have made the term circumstantial evidence popular. How dare she? I mean, serious literature? That shouldn't be about empowering women. But she also wrote children's books, including an adaptation of Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. That's still available if you're wondering. Serious literature should also not be for children. That's just silly. Why would you do that? Okay, but that wasn't the only reason the dudes weren't happy with her. She also believed in equal rights, especially in education, specifically the sciences. She wasn't afraid to criticize that whole situation. Well, now that's just plain rude. Whatever was she thinking? I repeat. Regardless of that bullshit, her works made her just as popular as other authors, like Charles Dickens. He actually wrote an article in which he said, "She can never be read without pleasure and profit, and can never write otherwise than sensibly and well." I mean, Dickens, right? In 1845, Catherine translated and edited a German story about the supernatural, and a new passion was born. Then in 1847, she published her most popular work, The Night Side of Nature, or Ghosts and Ghost Seers. It is one of the largest best-selling collections of ghost sightings and psychic phenomena ever. Each chapter outlines a class of phenomena. I keep wanting to go do-do-do-do-do. Sorry. She mapped separate spheres of spirit worlds. She called out science for ignoring the interconnectedness between natural and supernatural. She insisted that science and the paranormal could be combined into one field of study. Imagine that. But they didn't listen. So she was the first to propose a methodology for paranormal research. Can you say ahead of her time? Alas, in her time, critics dismissed The Night Side as fiction, since that's what she'd always written. Because of course. But they didn't consider she used scientific method for studying the accounts she gathered. Granted, her research relied heavily on what people told her they'd experienced, which you can dismiss if you want, but she didn't give just one account. There were a lot of them. And when you have that many corroborating stories from independent sources, you've got a body of evidence. At the very least, that's grounds for further investigation. She called science ignorant for insisting the paranormal didn't exist without their own investigation. Now, the night side predates Victorian obsession with the paranormal and mysticism. One source said it paved the way for the rapid rise in spiritualism. But again, it was fiction. A critic, with a peener of course, dismissed it as loose, deplorable, and having careless inconsequence. They really didn't like how popular a woman was becoming. See, spiritualism then was largely led by women, and that was offensive, because it meant that women were being validated. You can't do that! The fuck were they thinking? Please tell me you're hearing sarcasm there. Oh! But the night side also brought two words into the English language from German. I know without any doubt that you know what they are. Doppelganger and poltergeist. Yeah, so you can thank her for that eventual, "they're here." Fucking movie is terrifying. Unfortunately, later in life, Catherine suffered a mental break. She was allegedly found walking the streets of Edinburgh, covering a handkerchief, and wearing nothing. The gossips loved that little morsel. Her reputation never recovered. But Dickens liked and respected her, right? Yeah, about that. Because of me, I started digging. And wouldn't you know, Dickens was a dick. According to several sources, he was a raging misogynist, hell-bent on keeping women down. And whoo doggy, don't stand up to that fucker if you don't have a peener in your pants. He was the reason her reputation tanked. He wrote articles about her, spreading the story of her insanity. He called her a medium and an ass. She was seen in the street not only stark mad, but stark naked too, thinking she was invisible because a spirit told her she would be. He was so relieved she was under restraint for that. She'd been put in an asylum. It was sensationalized and exaggerated. He trashed her so efficiently that people all but disregarded anything she wrote as fiction. She tried to publicly disagree with the dick. She said she'd suffered from digestive problems for her whole life, which caused the alleged episode. Of course, people didn't believe her. But according to psychiatrist.com, there are conditions, physical conditions, that have the potential to cause hallucinations. Just one is urea cycle disorders. That's a buildup of ammonia in the system and can cause hallucinations. In my opinion, she wasn't the one full of shit. That was the dick. So, what changed his opinion? Well, after covering these stories for a little while now, I've learned to read what isn't there. You know, the old read between the lines thingy. If you stop taking things at face value and start seeing the things that are intentionally minimized or completely erased, you stumble across the truth. I said that once she was just as popular as the dick. And others. And the dick's agenda did not include a woman being more popular than he was. That mental break gave him the fuel he needed to completely incinerate her reputation. Because of his reputation, people believed him. Well, maybe it wasn't his reputation. Maybe he was just a twat rocket in a society run by twat rockets. She went from well-respected and well-read author to nothing more than a crazy person who thought she could see ghosts. Her works, all of them, were labeled fiction. Empirical evidence, her scientific method, none of that mattered once she threatened the dick's popularity. Oh, but then the dudes after her, when they did the same thing, that was evidence. And credible. And fucking groundbreaking. They literally used a form of the methodology she'd proposed, then left her relegated to the madhouse. Catherine Crowe is the reason you can turn on the TV and watch people insist that demons are running rampant. They're not, that's just ratings. Catherine Crowe challenged society's belief that the supernatural has nothing to do with the natural. Catherine Crowe is the mother of modern paranormal investigating, but history remembers her as a mad woman who wrote nothing but fiction, all because she had the nerve to be smarter and more popular than a dick.